Good morning and welcome to Let the Bible Speak. My name is Alex Meredith. I'm the minister for the Marquette Church of Christ. Glad to be with you this morning. We are covering a lesson today titled Canaan in Our Own Backyard. We're going to be looking at a passage in 1 Kings chapter 10. We'll get there in just a minute. Today's lesson is a specifically targeted one. Now, usually we don't do this because typically it's intended for everybody of all ages and demographics to hear. But this is a very particularly targeted lesson towards young adults, college students, that age. Now, if you are not a young adult and you're listening to this, which I imagine is many of you, I still want you to hear this because there are young adults all around you and they need to hear this and they need you to hear this. But that said, it is a lesson directly targeted towards the young adult audience. When we talk about young adults in the modern world, ages somewhere around 18 through 25, I really think that many of them are experiencing what I would call a crisis of meaning. There are a lot of people that see the symptoms of this, by the way. Statistically, it's well backed. There are record levels of things like anxiety, loneliness, addiction, suicide. Those things are just through the roof to levels that were just unimaginable 30, 40 years ago, right? But nobody seems to be able to identify the problem. And I actually think the problem is rather obvious. They don't believe that their life makes any difference. What makes it worse is that many young adults are also surrounded by full-grown adults who believe the exact same thing. And you know that this is true in part because you see it. You see the slander, what people say about the younger generation and how Gen Z is, and it used to be millennials, but now millennials have become the bashers, right? They used to be the targets and now they're the bullies. Or, maybe it's a bunch of other groups, right? But everybody now looking down on Gen Z saying, wow, what a bunch of lazy attention seekers. You see the slander. There is a music artist. Her name is Olivia Rodrigo, and I know she's received some controversy in the past, but she has written this one song that I thought was really, really powerful. The name of the song is called Teenage Dream. And I think it is a fantastic snapshot. She herself, being a young adult, young artist, she captures the collective frustration of the younger generation being looked down upon by those who are older. So I want to read you the lyrics from this song. She says, "When am I going to stop being wise beyond my years and just start being wise? When am I going to stop being great for my age and just start being good? I'll blow out the candles, happy birthday to me. Got your whole life ahead of you, you're only 19. They all say that it gets better the more you grow. But what if I don't?" I really do believe that most young adults are eager to join the ranks of society as a valuable member of it. I think they just don't know how. Because, in part, they have been largely pushed down by those above them rather than lifted up. Christianity in the United States has, broadly speaking, seen a decline no matter what tradition you look at, Protestant, Catholic, different Protestant denominations, whatever. Generally speaking, there has been a decline in the United States, but that's not true everywhere in the world, actually. In certain parts of the world, Christianity has done very, very well and has multiplied. One great example of this, believe it or not, is the nation of China. China, despite some really extreme opposition from the government, has experienced the fastest rate of growth in the world of Christianity in the last few decades. So since the year 1980, where there is an estimated about 1 million Christian practitioners. Since 1980, that number has grown to over 100 million practitioners. It has multiplied 100-fold in the last 45 years. The African continent is also another place where Christianity has exploded, where even just decades ago, especially, you look back about 100 years ago, pretty much all of Africa was either a combination of Muslim groups or local tribal religious practices, right? But now, today, within the African continent, there are 3 times as many professing Christians within the African continent than there are in the entire United States. I know that's a continent, not a nation, so it's kind of an unfair comparison, but did you know that there were that many? It's really spectacular. Now, there is another place, actually within the United States, that has seen some unusual growth for Christianity. And that is within the realm of United States college campuses. There was a recent poll. For some reason, I didn't write it down, but I believe it was Pew Research, if I remember correctly. And in this poll, it polled that 34% of Gen Z reported as religiously unaffiliated. So that's a self-report, that's a poll. So these are people saying themselves, I am not affiliated with any religious group or ideology or anything. 34%. That is, at least currently, the highest among all generations. And yet, you have particularly national campus ministry organizations like Cru and Delight, which, by the way, I know are both at NMU. I'm not sure about Tech. But Cru and Delight have reported unprecedented growth within the last few years. And there's something really encouraging about that. Back on February 8th of 2023, some of you probably remember this story, it's quite recent. Back on February 8th of 23, there were about 200 students that gathered for a morning chapel service at Asbury University. This is a small Christian college in the little city of Wilmore, Kentucky. Not huge. And they had this chapel service, but after the chapel service came to its natural end, the students stuck around and just kept singing. And they kept singing, and they would pray, and they sang some more, and they prayed, and they sang, and they sang, and they sang. And eventually, students in there they got out their phones, and they started recording what was going on, this prolonged, extended chapel service. And pretty soon, some other students and faculty started showing up, and then some people in the community just started showing up. And then, before you know it, there were people from nearby colleges that were coming, students from nearby colleges coming to this chapel service that had gone over time. And then, and this is where we have a picture I want to pull up and show you. It's going to come up on your screen here. Yeah, so this kept going for 2 weeks. 2 weeks, 24/7 or 24/14. For 2 weeks at the little Asbury University, this morning chapel service went on, and an estimated 60,000 young adults from around the world. There were people flying across the world from other countries to come to this chapel service, and it later became known as the Asbury Revival. Largely attended by, you guessed it, young adults. I think Gen Z is absolutely starving for meaning in a world that is constantly telling them that there isn't any. That is constantly telling them that they are nothing more than lazy attention seekers, which raises the question to me, who's going to tell them the truth? Who's going to tell them the truth? Feel free to come back to me here. I recently heard a case that I think is actually quite compelling. The case was made that the modern university setting can actually be pretty well compared to the ancient land of Canaan. Now, Canaan, when we talk about Canaan, this is, of course, the land that was promised to Abraham back in Genesis chapter 12. It's the land that Joshua leads the Israelite people into, crossing over the Jordan River. Later on, it actually becomes this symbol of like heaven and the like. But practically speaking, it's this land that was promised to the Israelite people and where they lived for many, many years, for hundreds of years prior to exile and then again after exile. Leading up to the time of Christ. Now, the case was made that the modern university setting is very much, in many ways, like the land of Canaan. So think about the geography for one thing. I don't have a map to show you right now, but Canaan itself, if you look to the west, there's a Mediterranean Sea. To the north, there's some mountains and desert. To the south, it's just desert. To the east, it's a river and then desert. It's very geographically isolated. It's very much unlike the other environments that surrounds it. And that very much reminds me of the college experience. You are here, even if it is within a town, like NMU is, for example. The life on campus is in some way different from the life of the rest of Marquette. Even though, yes, they are in the city of Marquette, there is something unique about it, something different about being on campus, just like Canaan in the ancient world. It also serves as a population funnel. Now, when we talk about ancient Canaan in this way, because there were so many deserts and mountains all around Canaan, if anybody wanted to get from a place like Egypt up to Syria or Assyria or Babylon or anywhere over to West Asia, anything like that, they pretty much had to pass through Canaan. And so in that way, it became this population funnel where all these people from different walks of life come together. That's precisely what happens in the university setting. You have people coming from all different places, all different experiences, all different ideas, and coming together, and those merge in this really unique, unusual kind of, melting pot, to use that analogy. And because of that, there is a very high volume of ideological syncretism, where these different ideas that people bring from all over end up kind of melding together. And it creates a very unique, not only geography and environment, but also a unique way of thinking for the people who actually live there. Now, when you talk about ancient Israel in relation to the land of Canaan, what was God's goal with Canaan? God's goal with Canaan was to bring the Israelite people into that land. They were actually originally supposed to expunge the native groups who lived there, and it would be their land, and they were to be an influence, a positive influence on the rest of the world. They were going to show the rest of the world what it looked like and what it meant to be a God-fearer. That's what Israel was intended to do. A few passages to look at along those lines. Genesis chapter 12, verses 2 and 3. What's the promise to Abraham? I will make of you a great nation. I will bless you and make your name great so that you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and him who dishonors you I will curse, and in you all the families of the earth will be blessed. The rest of the world was going to come to know God through the nation of Israel living in the land of Canaan. That was the idea. Psalm 22, verse 27, all the ends of the earth shall remember and turn to the Lord, and all the families of the nations shall worship before you. And of course, the chief pinnacle worship location in Israel was Jerusalem, at least for most of the time of it. In Isaiah chapter 49, verse 6, he says, it is too light a thing that you should be my servant, to raise up the tribes of Jacob and to bring back the preserved of Israel. I will make you as a light for the nations, that my salvation may reach to the end of the earth. So through Israel, through this population funnel, through this unique environment, the rest of the world would then become recipients of the grace of God from those people who learned how to fear God and follow his ways. At least that was the idea of it. You have talk in Scripture about the Imago Dei. That's the Latin version of it. Normally in English we just say the image of God. We recognize that from Genesis chapter 1, verse 27, man and woman are made in the image of God. That's what it says in Genesis 1:27. Man and woman, he created them. In his image, he created them. Now, in the ancient Near East, in the land of Canaan, they had a very particular understanding about what it meant, what divine images meant. So archaeologically, we have all sorts of little statuettes of Baal, ranging from this big to huge towering statues. And these statues, we have all these accounts of people worshiping the statues. And that seems rather odd to us, except you got to realize that in the ancient world, when you had a representation of deity, like Baal or something of that sort, when you have a physical representation of that thing, it serves as a divine substitute for presence, right? So it wasn't just that this was a statue of Baal and they worshipped Baal, somehow by thinking about him and looking at the statue. They really believed that Baal, in part, was present there in that image. But God reverses the formula, doesn't he? He says, no, I have made man in my image, right? And because of that, what does that make us? If we are divine representatives then, that makes us representatives of God to the entire world. That is a mission. It's an obligation. That's what he was trying to accomplish through Israel. That's what he's trying to accomplish through us today. We are divine representatives. That's why in 2 Corinthians chapter 5, we're called ambassadors of Christ, right? Young adults have that mission too, by the way. That's a lot of responsibility to be a representative of God in the world when you're 18, 20 years old. That's a big order. Now, we're talking about young adult population. There's been a lot of research done on this time of life in general, and researchers seem to come to pretty much unanimous conclusion on a few basic points. For one thing, any kind of cultural events that occur within the period of young adulthood tend to have an outsized impact on things like political opinion, and that actually extends out to many, many decades after that occurs. So cultural events have an outsized impact while you're a young adult. There are three major formative decisions that young adults make that tend to be highly impactful for future decisions, and that is who you choose to marry, your vocation, and the friends that you choose to be around, right? Those are highly formative. And then finally, there is a certain level of independence that young adults have in the university setting in particular that tends to lead to experimentation. So things that you couldn't do when you were 17 years old, now all of a sudden you're 18, living away from home, you can stay up till 2 a.m. and you can eat the cookies, right? You now have this freedom, and that often leads to experimentation, and the experimentation tends to form into lifelong habits, right? Dr. Chris Buxton put this in a really helpful way, I think. He said college students are actively becoming the people they are always going to be. If that's true, if all of what we just said is true, for one thing, young adults have to choose what they do very carefully because that may have very big ramifications down the line. That's part of it. The second part of that is that young adults not only have the responsibility, but they have an opportunity to make a bigger impact on the kingdom of God than anybody else in the entire community. Not in the future, not just in the far distant future, right now. Isn't that something? For the way that we talk about that generation, you might not believe it. 1 Kings chapter 10, starting in verse 1. Let me read this to you. This is King Solomon, the third king of Israel, after he has been gifted wisdom by God. Now when the queen of Sheba heard of the fame of Solomon concerning the name of the Lord, she came to test him with hard questions. She came to Jerusalem with a very great retinue, with camels bearing spices and very much gold and precious stones. And when she came to Solomon, she told him all that was on her mind. And Solomon answered all her questions. There was nothing hidden from the king that he could not explain to her. And when the queen of Sheba had seen all the wisdom of Solomon, the house that he had built, the food of his table, the seating of his officials and their attendants, and the attendance of his servants, their clothing, his cupbearers, and his burnt offerings that he had offered at the house of the Lord, there was no more breath in her. And she said to the king, the report was true that I heard in my own land of your words and of your wisdom, but I did not believe the reports until I came and my own eyes had seen it. And behold, the half was not told me. Your wisdom and prosperity surpass the report that I heard. Happy are your men, Happy are your servants who continually stand before you and hear your wisdom. Blessed be the Lord your God, who has delighted in you and set on you the throne of Israel. Because the Lord loved Israel forever, he has made you king, that you may execute justice and righteousness. Then she gave the king 120 talents of gold. That's a lot of gold, by the way. And a very great quantity of spices and precious stones. Never again came such an abundance of spices as these that the queen of Sheba gave to King Solomon. So King Solomon, which, by the way, it's kind of debated what age he is at this point. Some people say possibly as young as 18 years old. So Solomon, you can imagine a little 18-year-old kid. You don't feel like it when you're 18, but that's how a lot of people in the world would have seen him. 18 years old, and he has this incredible faith. He has this blessing of God's wisdom that's been given to him because of his faith. And what happens to the queen because of what he does? Takes her breath away. She had no more breath in her, right? From verse 5. And what ended up happening? This foreigner with entirely different belief system, what does she end up saying in verse 9? This is so incredible. Blessed be the Lord your God, the Lord. If you have a Bible, most Bibles will do this. Modern translations, it'll have Lord in all caps right there, because that's not the standard word for deity or, lowercase g God. That's the name Yahweh. Blessed be Yahweh. Blessed be the God of Israel, of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That God. Blessed be God. Blessed be the Lord, your God. What did it take on Solomon's part for her to be able to come and worship Yahweh? It just took faith. I think the young adults that are here in our communities in Marquette, in the UP, I think they can have the same outsized effect on the world if they have faith. And maybe if we have a little bit of faith in them. I'll wrap up today by telling you about Timothy. Timothy is this young man we see in the New Testament. He crops up during the missionary journeys of Paul and Barnabas and Silas. So he ends up actually coming in the second missionary journey. In Acts 16, he's recruited by Paul and Silas to join them and accompany them. And so he joins them. He's actually circumcised. It's a whole ordeal. But in 1 Timothy chapter 1, we see that he is given a very, very important role. It makes a point in Acts 16 to talk about how young he is. This is reiterated later on. But in 1 Timothy chapter 1, verse 3, he was left in the city of Ephesus to deal with false teachers that were contaminating the church. So in 1 Timothy chapter 1, verse 3, as I urged you when I was going to Macedonia, remain at Ephesus so that you may charge certain persons not to teach any different doctrine. And then again in 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse 2, preach the word, be ready in season and out of season, reprove, rebuke, and exhort with complete patience and teaching. He was given this enormous responsibility. And again, evidently he was quite young. This is what leads Paul in 1 Timothy chapter 4 to say what he does. So this is, I think, an encouragement to all young Christians. 1 Timothy chapter 4, starting in verse 12. Let no one despise you for your youth, but set the believers an example in speech, in conduct, in love, in faith, in purity. Until I come, devote yourself to the public reading of Scripture, to exhortation, to teaching. Do not neglect the gift you have, which was given you by prophecy when the council of elders laid their hands on you. Practice these things, immerse yourself in them, so that all may see your progress. Timothy is not just a participant in the church, he is a leader in the church. Very often when we talk about younger generations, we have this tendency to talk about how, well, they're the church of tomorrow, right? Well, in some cases, maybe that's true. And there is certainly a maturing process that needs to happen for people to be leaders in the church. But do you think it's possible that for some people who have perhaps undergone that maturing process, could it be that they're not just the church of tomorrow? They are the church of today. And they can actually be leaders in the church. Not just, not just of the future, I guess that's what I'm trying to say here. Don't let anybody convince you, whether you're a student or whether you're a grandparent, don't let anybody convince you that you don't have a role in the church or a role in God's eternal kingdom. Well, that's pretty much it for the lesson itself that I have for you today. I wanted to give you a heads up about the next several weeks and things that are coming up. So Brian Poe, the minister with the Escanaba Church of Christ, he's going to be coming on to host a program, I believe for 10 weeks, if I remember correctly, pretty much through the month of July. My wife and I actually have our third child on the way. As I'm recording this, which I am recording this a little bit early because of this, but as of right now, in 6 days, my wife is scheduled to have a C-section. Our third child is going to be born to us, God willing, and praying that everything goes well with that. Along that same line, I would ask if you could please pray for my family. Again, by the time you're reading this, hopefully we will have a week or 2 week old in our house by then, and please pray for his health, for my wife's health, for Hannah, and for my sanity, please, if you could. But we're really looking forward to all of that. So before we go, I do want to tell you about the resources that we have to offer to all of you. We have a Bible correspondence course. This is published by the World Bible School. It's a 7-part workbook series. You can participate in this. You can go to worldbibleschool.org and you can sign up online. You can also sign up to participate by mail. Just contact us directly if you want to do it that way, and we'll get those workbooks sent to you. If you don't have a Bible, let us know. We would be happy to send you one. Just mail us either at the address up on your screen at P.O. Box 372, that is in Marquette, zip code 49855. You can also contact us by email. Send that to church@marquettecoc.org. Again, that's church@marquettecoc.org. I know we don't have it up on the screen, but I wanted to share that with you as well. You can listen to any of these episodes on any of the apps there on your screen, on Spotify, Audible, any of those. Just search Let the Bible Speak UP, and you can listen to the audio from any of these episodes that air here on TV6 as well. I want to thank you so much for giving me your time this morning and for giving me your time over the last several weeks. I'll be back in the month of August. Look forward to that. Until then, may God bless you.